There's a joke that is now sort of, familiar to many Egyptians, which the revolutionaries would fight and take hold of the center of Tahrir in order to overthrow the regime, whereas the Muslim Brotherhood would join Tahrir episodically, periodically, when it felt that it needed it in order to score political point against the military, and then retreat once that point had been scored or once it felt that it had gone too far. But it didn't have the same interest as the young people who were in the square at the beginning. And so as the young revolutionaries said, in Tahrir till victory, the Muslim Brotherhood, according to this joke, would say, in Tahrir till sometime this afternoon-ish. And the revolutionaries, again, the liberal, secular revolutionaries, the ones that the West identified with, if you go back and read the articles that were written 18 months ago in our own press, this is what this was supposed to be about. People celebrating the fact that there were no Islamist slogans. There was no anti-Israeli slogans, that US flags were not being burned. That's what people remembered. Go there today and get a sense of what's going on. Bear in mind that the revolutionaries, if that's what we want to call them, get about 2% of the popular vote in the parliamentary elections. Even if they were to double or triple that score in next elections, it gives you a sense of the magnitude of their representation, what they really mean for average Egyptians, many of whom today are as tired of people taking to the square as they are of instability, and that's why they choose one of two conservative forces, the conservative force of the past, or the conservative, more familiar force of a very familiar face, the Muslim Brotherhood, but which is known to be deeply, deeply rooted in society and deeply conservative. Actually, if you want to look at what happened in the last election, and I'm just for the sake of slight exaggeration, the choice of the three top candidates, one of them was aspiring to go back about 18 months earlier to the Mubarak era. That was Ahmed Shafiq, who came in second. Another one was calling for return a few decades earlier to the era of Nasser, to the era of Pan-Arabism. That was Hamdin Sabahi, who came in third. And one, I guess, was calling for a return several centuries back to the golden age of Islam. So in this forward-looking revolutionary era, everyone was looking very firmly in their rearview mirror with a competition between those who wanted to go back a few months, a few years or decades, and a few centuries. And of course, the other irony is that the presidential outcome, what we've just witnessed just last weekend, would not have occurred. We wouldn't have known who, in my view, who the victor was if people had not used that most revolutionary, modern of forms of activism by taking to the streets, replicating what had happened during the heyday of the revolution in 2011. But they were doing so in order to referee between, as I said, those two conservative forces, the Muslim Brotherhood in the person of Mohammed Morsi, or the SCAF in the person of Ahmed Shafiq. So that's the unfinished business of Egypt. And just to add one thing, just one of those other ironies in the case of Egypt, when I was there, what struck me is how many secular activists bemoaned the victory of the Muslim Brotherhood and actually were hoping for the victory of the candidate, let's call him the candidate of the SCAF, and how many of them were relieved when the Constitutional Court announced the dissolution of the parliament because they thought that was the best way to cut down the Muslim Brotherhood to size, which tells us something about how one could be more secular than one is democrat.